True crime. From cold cases to serial killers, missing persons, and more.
100% he did this.
I'd go off into fantasy world.
How much more lucky can you get that you're not on death row?
You want to know what we know.
My name is Jay. This is Guilty of Crime.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Watts Wednesday. Happy Hump Day. Jay with Guilty of Crime. My hair looks kind of cool right there. Look at that. Got the red light going on. I wanted it to look like the cop background like I always love. Want to say hello to everybody and thank you for being here today. It's Watts Wednesday. It's chill, I should call it. Chill Wednesday. We're just hanging out. I want to say hi to everybody because I appreciate not talking to myself on a live chat. So thank you. And I have Simon. Wow. She's getting off the hook, and Grandma and nearly everyone else, sister, shake my head. I hope not, Simon. Welcome here. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please do. This actually looks really cool. Today we're talking about the Watts case, but I welcome all comments and questions. So today we are doing Watts Wednesday with Deception Detective. I'll put that in there so we know what we're talking about today. I've had quite a few comments in the last couple of days, some crazy comments that we will save for another day about that case. So Simon, Marjorie, sounds like it. Hi. I'm not sure what we're talking. Oh, Simon. We're going to Simon. So I'm just going to shout out since I don't know what y'all were talking about. Joyce, what's up? Hello, Selena. And we got Marjorie. Thank you, Bree, for being here as usual. Letty, Stephanie, Pam. What is up? And the family, everybody. Maria. Did I do Maria? And Lori, what is up, everybody? Thank you for being here today on the chillest day of the week, midweek. So today we're talking about Watts Wednesday. And Watts Wednesday is we're going to do Chris Watts and Nichol Kessinger. I have a really cool video that I thought I would start with first. It's actually about Nichol Kessinger. I hadn't seen it before, and Dr. Grande talks about their relationship and how their relationship may have affected Chris Watts and manipulated the situation. So let's start off with that today. And I can see as people roll in, everybody should know who Chris Watts is. If you don't, then I'll go back. All right, Watts Wednesday, everybody. Let's listen to Dr. Grande talk about how he thinks Nichol Kessinger may have manipulated Chris Watts.
And specifically about how the affair that he was involved in seemed to contribute to the murder. So really, I received a lot of questions asking about Nichol Kessinger's role and what kind of dynamics could have been at play there that, again, may have contributed to these horrible homicides that Chris Watts committed. Now, whenever we're talking about causality, why people do things, it's very difficult to nail down. I'm just really speculating about what could have been happening with people in this situation. I'm not diagnosing Chris Watts or diagnosing Nichol Kessinger or anybody else. Really just speculating based on available evidence. And this really brings me to an important point. The available evidence in this case is really not great. There's a lot of unreliable sources, and the largest one, of course, is Chris Watts himself. Because he lied so much in this case, there's no way to know if he's really telling the truth or not. So it's kind of a difficult situation when it comes to the credibility of all these different stories and how we weigh this different evidence we see in this case. So I'm going to give a quick summary of the case. A lot of people are familiar with it, but just as an overview, we see that Chris Watts, age 33, and Nichol Kessinger, age 30, start an affair sometime in late June, early July of 2018. And that affair continued until mid-August of 2018. And that's when Chris Watts murdered his wife and unborn child and his two daughters. And after this, police interviewed Nichol Kessinger, the mistress, and she denied having any involvement. And it is important to note that she was never charged.
And I'll slow it down a little. I was at 1.5. He's going a little fast. Hello, NYC Baby Boomer. What's up, everybody, as you're rolling in? Melissa Johnson, as usual. Hello, I hope everything's going okay. Darlene, 9:27 a.m. in Guam time. What? It's 4:27 here. That's crazy. All right. Dr. Grande, I do love his assessments, and I love when I find them. This one's really old since Watts. The Christopher Watts case happened in 2018. So, yeah, let's listen to this together. I'm going to back up a little bit because it was fast. So let's listen to this and him talking about how Nichol Kessinger probably manipulated Chris Watts, how the affair affected it.
About what could have been happening with people in this situation. I'm not diagnosing Chris Watts or diagnosing Nichol Kessinger or anybody else. Really just speculating based on available evidence. And this really brings me to an important point. The available evidence in this case is really not great. There's a lot of unreliable sources, and the largest one, of course, is Chris Watts himself. Because he lied so much in this case, there's no way to know if he's really telling the truth or not. So it's kind of a difficult situation when it comes to the credibility of all these different stories and how we weigh this different evidence we see in this case. So I'm going to give a quick summary of the case. A lot of people are familiar with it, but just as an overview, we see that Chris Watts, age 33, and Nichol Kessinger, age 30, start an affair sometime.
Yeah, so if you don't know the backstory or you just want a memory re-jog of the case, he's talking about that, and he's going to give us a little analysis here. So thank you for being here today. It's been a rough week or 2 or 3 or 4. But everything's all good. Happy Wednesday, everybody.
Time in late June, early July of 2018. And that affair continued until mid-August of 2018. And that's when Chris Watts murdered his wife and unborn child and his 2 daughters. And after this, police interviewed Nichol Kessinger, the mistress, and she denied having any involvement. And it is important to note that she was never charged with anything. Now, Chris Watts, of course, was charged after confessing to the murder of his wife.
Right, and that's why we're here today, because I think all of us still think that Nichol has a role in it, and that's what we're talking about today, is what we think her role is. Did she actually have a role, or was her role just purely manipulation, or maybe pushing, maybe not in a sense saying, hey, do it, but in a sense saying, giving ultimatums to Chris Watts, saying, you know, you need to get divorced, you need to hurry up, you need to do this, you need to do that, and it pushed him over the edge. I don't know. I don't think any of us will ever know.
And then later on, confessing to all the murders. And he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And he's serving that right now in Wisconsin. He's serving a sentence in a prison in Wisconsin. So that's kind of a quick summary of the case. And we see an interview of Chris that law enforcement carried out in March of 2018. And they found him to be somewhat credible in that interview. And some of that information here kind of comes from that interview. But I'm still on the fence. I mean, he had a lot of time to kind of craft lies while in prison. And it's not clear why he would be honest at this point, although it's also not perfectly clear why he would be dishonest. And I don't think that law enforcement are really in the best position to decide who's lying or not. We know from the research literature that really nobody's good at determining if somebody's lying or not. And sometimes law enforcement officers believe they have superior abilities in this area. But again, evidence shows that they do not. So just because they found him to be credible, that doesn't really mean a lot to me as a scientist. So again, we have a lot of unreliable information, but some of the facts of the case, of course, have been established. Nichol Kessinger and Chris Watts had an affair, and Chris Watts murdered his family. Those things we know for sure. So getting back to the original question, a lot of people are interested in the dynamics here and how this affair seemed to really motivate or push Chris to these bad acts. And it didn't really seem to affect Nichol in the same way. Obviously, she wasn't clearly involved in the crime. She wasn't charged, so it doesn't appear like she was involved. And she seemed much more indifferent to the relationship than did Chris. So one theory here kind of revolves around vulnerable narcissism. I touched on this in a prior video. This idea that
Now he's going to talk about vulnerable narcissism. This is not something that we've talked about before, so this is an awesome perspective. And I do love how Dr. Grande talks things out and has a different perspective than Dr. G explains, or even Deception Detective, who we're going to bring on after. That's what we're doing, a collab with Mr. DD. So I do think she kept pressuring him, Joyce, to leave his family, and she had no business getting involved with the married man. I agree. Sometimes that happens. You can't crucify everybody. It's not something that I agree with. It happens, but normally family annihilation doesn't come out of it. But nothing ever good does come out of it. That much I'll say. Definitely not a good thing. Hey, Maya, chat. everybody from Williamsburg, Brooklyn. What is up? Jacqueline, nearly a decade earlier, Chris Coleman committed the same crime. He is coincidentally housed in the same prison as Watts. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, because they call Chris Coleman the original family annihilator. And I do have a folder called Family Annihilators, and we're going to do a series on that eventually as time frees up.
Chris Watts was actually socially awkward and shy. Now, I'm a little skeptical that he really fits this category enough to meet these particular criteria, but these constructs are on a continuum, and we do know that vulnerable narcissism tends to oscillate back and forth between that vulnerable state and a grandiose state of narcissism. So everything's on a continuum, and with this movement back and forth, it could be that at times he was socially awkward and shy. Nichol described him in an interview with police as an introvert, but not extremely introverted. And usually when we use the term socially awkward or shy, we are talking about a little bit more of an extreme version of introversion or low extroversion. So anyway, under this theory, he has characteristics consistent with vulnerable narcissism. And Nichol Kessinger manipulated him, not necessarily to commit murder, but unintentionally manipulated him and kind of moved him in this direction of being homicidal.
Really?
So the analogy that kind of comes up here that I think is appropriate, and this is how some people conceptualize it, is that, like, say there's like a beautiful actress, and she's very wealthy and very successful, and she's been in a lot of movies, and she kind of picks a sad, lonely, socially awkward guy who doesn't really stand out for many positive reasons.
And we know where he's going with that. So that's very interesting. I love his analysis and the analogy that he's using. Now, I did hear about the detectives. I didn't know which one, but they were affected very bad. If you watch the trial, I mean, some of them look like they want to cry on the stand talking about what they found and how bad it was. The children coming from the oil tanks. It's crazy. Unintentionally what? I found that Watts is hard to read. Very hard to read. There's some analysis on Dr. G. If we get through this, we can play that after.
Right. He's not kind of at the same level with acting or fame or anything, but even for other achievements, he doesn't really stand out. And she decides to start dating him. What would a man in that situation do? Right? In a sense, the beautiful actress could manipulate that man without even trying, because the status level is so different, or the apparent status level is so different. Now, I know Nichol Kessinger was not a Hollywood actress or anything like that, but that's kind of the analogy as people have described it to me when they say, well, this is maybe touching on what happened, is that she had a lot of power in this relationship because she was very attractive, and Chris didn't.
Yeah, I think he's using allegedly and maybes. You know, he's not one of those guys that goes hardcore and says, I absolutely think so. Unintentionally manipulated him. I think she manipulated him, but we don't know if she intentionally manipulated him to family annihilate, right? I think that's what we're talking about. And yeah, we don't know, because we don't have any text messages or proof to say that she told him to off his family. We do know more than likely that she said, hey, here's an ultimatum. If you don't hurry up and move out, we're done.
Think of himself as attractive. So it creates a gap more similar to kind of the sad, lonely guy and the beautiful actress. That's what I really mean here. It's an analogy, not what directly happened with Nichol and Chris. And he did mention that Nichol appeared to pursue him, and the evidence is pretty clear about their sexual activity. They had a lot of sex, about 4 or 5 times a week. They met, and who knows how many sexual encounters that involved. And we also saw that Nichol sent Chris semi-nude photos. So I'm a little kind of torn on this theory, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment here, that this idea that Nichol was really kind of nonchalant and not invested in the relationship, and Chris was head over heels. The evidence doesn't support this completely, but there are a few important factors to consider, and that's what I'm going to talk about here next.
Good. We're going to hear those factors from him, and we know that she did stalk the wife. Absolutely, she stalked the wife because they found the searches of her looking at her Facebook, and she knew a lot more. She was looking the family up even before the relationship was, or should I say, the affair started. So there you go. And you're right, Davey. Manipulation's almost impossible to prove. There's one case out there that they did prove, and that was the girl that manipulated her boyfriend into offing himself. I can't remember her name right now. It was recent, Michelle something or other. And I think that was one of the first cases that they ever were able to prosecute for text messages telling him to go get back in the truck and do it.
So the factors involved in their affair relationship were actually pretty interesting, and there's several of them. And we see here that the first one to stand out would be immaturity on both Nichole's part and on the part of Chris Watts. Now, you get this sense from the interview with Nichol that maybe she was more experienced in relationships than was Chris. Now, Chris has said in interviews that he did not have a lot of experience with women. He didn't have a lot of experience with dating. So he does kind of seem more naive, and she seems more experienced, even though she's younger. So immaturity and inexperience, I think, is one factor to consider. The next factor here is they were in a passionate phase of a relationship. And this is a really dangerous phase, right? I consider this the phase of bad decisions. If you break up romantic relationships into a passionate and compassionate.
Now, Joyce, she definitely was pressuring him, absolutely. And Deception Detective calls it out in a lot of other videos. And he calls it out in the way she's speaking to the police and the way she says things about certain helping him find an apartment, helping him move out, pushing him to do certain things, shows that she was pressuring him into something. And the something could have been to off his family, which is what a lot of people think, or just to hurry up and move out, and then it made him snap. But either way, his family and his children are no longer here.
Phase, sometimes called a companion phase. We see that the passionate phase occurs early, and it's really characterized by, again, bad decisions and impulsivity. And affairs only have the fantasy that comes with the passionate phase. They have the excitement. They don't have any depth or meaning, right? So when we look at the evidence, we see when people have affairs and they do end up together, they both leave their spouses or whatever and end up together, they rarely stay together because there's no depth. There's no sensitivity or.
Right. Remember that, folks. We should look up statistics here, but most of the time when you start a relationship out that way, and I'm a strong believer of what Dr. Grande is saying, and I don't have any statistics or facts in front of me, when someone's married and the other person's married and they break up the relationship and then they come together into a relationship, it rarely works out. Now, if somebody wants to look up statistics, the statistics are pretty high, as statistics in marriage in the United States are 50-50, and it may even be higher now. So if you get married nowadays, especially if you're on the younger age, if you're in your 20s, it's a 50-50 shot that the marriage is going to end in divorce. The older you get, the higher it goes up. But if you got a 50-50 chance, it's going to go up if you have one person married another and then they're cheating and then they get together. It gets even higher. So I would say anywhere between 60 and 70%, it's not going to work out.
Meaning or really purpose in that relationship. Affairs are shallow and, again, all passionate. But this passionate phase has a lot of power. As a matter of fact, some people only want to be in the passionate phase of a relationship. So when that passionate phase ends, they leave that relationship and go to another new relationship. They only want new relationships. We see that the passionate phase is intoxicating. Someone has an intense longing and emotional pain. And we also see that the reciprocated love, and this is in the research literature, and I'll put those references in the description of this video. The reciprocated love is associated with fulfillment and ecstasy, and unrequited love, which here is referring to separation when people can't be together. We see this is characterized by emptiness, anxiety, and despair, all of which are actually fairly powerful motivators. Now,
absolutely, those are all powerful. And Davey, you're right about marriage. Marriage was something that was made up. Well, it was made to be a long time ago. It's a religious thing, right? And it was made when our lifespan was 30, 40 years to be married forever until death do us part. Nowadays, people live till 80 or 90. So it is unrealistic, and it's really hard to live up to because our lifespans are double of what was created many years ago for religious purposes, invented. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I'm not saying that we are right, but it was invented by the church to gain power over children of its members. And people were not married or did not live that long. But I agree. Back then, people would stay together whether they were happy or not. There's a lot of laws, and the churches didn't agree. Still today, churches don't agree with divorce, whether you're happy or not. But we're not in those days anymore. We're in these days.
Usually when I use the term unrequited love, I'm talking about a romantic relationship where one person believes they love the other and the other person doesn't love them back. But as I mentioned, unrequited love in this context is referring to separation, or it could also be the thought of separation, which I think could have been at work here between Chris and Nichol. He was worried that they would be separated. Another thing we see with this phase is one person idealizes the other, right? So in these type of romantic relationships that are new, especially in affairs, the two people look at each other as being ideal. And we see this really on both sides, from Chris's perspective and from Nichol's perspective. I mentioned before there was a lot of sex here, and that's a characteristic of the passionate phase. And another thing I've seen about the passionate phase is for people that are involved in it, facts aren't really important, right? Objective evidence and critical thinking go out the window. They're really not even a part of the passionate phase, especially when infidelity is involved. So
this is a good conversation here, folks. Man, I wish this is awesome, actually, that there's only 55 people in the chat. Hit the like button. But this is a really good conversation for all of us to have. I haven't seen this video before. I thought I'd watch it with you for the first time. And wow, this is just a good conversation. I'm coming up on 19 years of being married in July, and marriage is not easy, people. It's not an easy thing. And congratulations, Darlene. 32 years next month. Congratulations. It's not easy. You grow together. You have to learn together. You have to work together, and you have to go to the trials and tribulations together. And passion doesn't just stay there, folks. You have to work on passion. It's not just, you don't just wake up and it's not just there. And marriage is very unrealistic, but I don't say don't do it, because I've enjoyed my marriage over 19 years. If you want children, getting married young makes sense. If you don't want children, then wait until older. Yeah, I don't think children, to me, have anything to do with marriage, James. I think just because someone's pregnant, don't get married because of that, please. Janet Francis, hello. I haven't seen you here before. Hello, hello. Marriage is not a cakewalk. Shit, passion, what's that? Passion does exist. You just got to work at it.
we see, again, immaturity, being inexperienced, the passionate phase, and then the last part here of these major factors would be impulsivity. And we see a lot of evidence that really both have some impulsivity issues, but especially
impulse.
He seems particularly impulsive, although some would argue that he premeditated these murders and maybe he wasn't impulsive. But running under the theory that he was, two of the aspects of impulsivity would be negative urgency and positive urgency. So negative urgency is when somebody has really negative emotions, like if somebody is depressed and they act on those negative emotions. And positive urgency is when somebody has positive emotions, like euphoria, which it seems like Chris had. So if the murders weren't premeditated, it would make sense that they were the product of positive urgency. He had these positive emotions and he was impulsive and acted on them. Now, there could have also been some negative urgency as well, like fear and anxiety. That's important to keep in mind. So I've covered these factors. I also want to mention this idea that it was intentional. So I talked about how the manipulation or the power differential may have been unintentional. So Nichol may have been really uninterested in the relationship and Chris was overly interested, and that created a power differential. But it also could have been intentional pressure. It could have been really an ultimatum where Nichol was demanding a decision. We don't see clear evidence of this stuff.
And I 110% believe that when she gives her statements to the investigators, she was absolutely doing what Dr. Grande is saying, and would want permission from the church or state. I'll tell you my own opinions, Davey. The reason I got married was, first of all, I love my wife. Second of all, when you own things together, like a house and property and motorhomes and cars and things like that, if you don't get married, you don't have the same rights to things. If somebody goes to the hospital, you can't be in there if you're not related or married. You also don't have the same, especially in a two-person relationship, two of the same sexes, you do not have the same permissions with the children. So for me, all of those factors weigh in, and I say put in the work if your relationship is worth it. Trulti Norway, what is up? I think today's an important conversation and a very good one.
Like there weren't any text messages or anything that I saw that indicated she was demanding he kind of decide what he was going to do. But we do see some interesting searches on Google. I mentioned these before in another video, like looking for a wedding dress and Googling the search term, man I'm having an affair with says he will leave his wife. So there could have been an intentional component or maybe not. And I'll talk about that next in dynamics, kind of how this could have played out either unintentionally or intentionally that created this power differential and how it may have led to these crimes. So when talking about the dynamics, we have to take a look at Nichol Kessinger's story, right? Her story after all this happened, when she talked to police, was that she was lied to and that Chris indicated that he was separating and then divorcing, which is kind of typical for men in affairs like this. It wouldn't be hard to imagine somebody in this situation saying that. They don't want to lose the potential relationship. They want to make sure they start off with a chance. So they say something like, oh yeah, I'm getting divorced. So this part of her story to me really holds together. This makes sense that initially she was lied to, and it more or less makes sense that she was lied to on an ongoing basis. But I'll talk about that a little bit. The part that makes me wonder about this is that, again, she was searching about men leaving their wives for a mistress. She indicated in a text message to a friend that she might always be in second place. So it does seem like she was really acknowledging this was an affair. But yet in the police interview,
Well, that is very relevant to this conversation, Maya. My husband was cheating while I was pregnant with the third daughter, currently 22 years old. Same situation as Chris. Shannan was pregnant with the third child. A few years later, you found out that your daughter had a half-sister, was born 3 months after the youngest. Well, that sucks, but I bet you it's cool now that you have a sister for your third daughter, huh? Interesting, very interesting, and very relevant. I have a doppelganger, suspect of being a half-brother. Yeah, very interesting. It is an interesting topic today, and it's a much-needed one, I think. It's a good one, good one. I love shows where I'm learning something, and it's not just like, duh. Thank you, Mr. Dr. Grande.
she almost seems shocked and surprised that anyone would consider this an affair. Now, she doesn't say that, but it's just the impression you get when listening to, I think it was a couple hours of interview, this idea that she was casually in this relationship, although she had some hopes about its potential, and maybe she never really categorized it in her mind as an affair. But again, the evidence points to this idea that she did understand it was an affair. So we have kind of, I think, mixed signals here. It seems like she knew, but maybe was in denial. But in her interview, if you listen to the whole interview, she does appear somewhat credible. Now, that's just listening to just this 2-hour segment.
She seems manipulative, not credible to me. Dr. Grande, again, he is a doctor and he has licenses and things that I don't. So, Trulte, Norway, you've been married 2 and 4 adult children and 10 grandchildren. Wow. Well, congratulations to you for the big family that you have. Funny, she didn't act shocked about the guy slaughtering his family. I agree. She said she was worried all night in one breath, and then the next breath, she said she was just chilling. So it's very interesting that she was worried, and then another time where she was just chilling and they were texting or talking. So many inconsistencies. I don't believe any of it, but this is a good analysis and a good conversation for us.
And that's not a lot of evidence to go on. And again, we have to be careful about how we weigh that evidence. But one thing I think was clear, she might have been credible, but the clear part was that she was immature. She seems to be quite immature. And she was clearly trying to distance herself from the whole situation. But again, I think this is somewhat understandable. She was being defensive because she didn't want to be implicated in these murders. You almost get this sense from the recording that she's trying to portray herself as the victim, like she was manipulated. And again, they were dating and not really in an affair because he was leaving his wife. But it's kind of a hard sell, right? If we look at the evidence, I'm not sure I really believe her account exactly. Again, there was a lot of sex. They spent a lot of time talking, going places. I find it hard to believe that she couldn't see the truth through all these various interactions. Now, maybe it's one of these things where,
oh, she did see the truth, and I believe she pushed Chris over the edge. Is that his fault? Yes, it's his fault. I've been in relationships in my younger years where I was pushed over the edge as well, so I do understand. But that was when I learned after that. And Chris Watts was a lot older. He was already 33. When I was pushed over the edge, I was probably 16, 17, maybe 20 at the oldest. And then I learned that's not how you do things. So it's one of those things that you learn and you grow from, and you just realize that being in an adult relationship takes work. If you want the passion, you got to put in the work to keep the passion. If you want a good relationship, you got to have trust and earn trust. And Pam, this is one of the channels where you can listen like a podcast or you can watch. Thank you for saying that, Bree. I appreciate you more than you know.
she knew or should have known, right? So again, maybe the denial played a role and kind of blocked her from seeing the truth, but I'm not sure. I think that this idea that she was a victim and she was manipulated by him is somewhat believable, but again, it's kind of a hard sell based on the evidence we have available now, which might be all the evidence we ever get in this particular case. One thing, though, is for certain here. Someone's lying. So if you look at the story of Nichol Kessinger and you look at the story of Chris Watts, somebody wasn't telling the truth. Maybe both of them weren't telling the truth. And I think probably for most people, it makes sense that Chris Watts was lying based on the fact that he committed those murders. So I think it, in some sense, makes sense to say, well, he was lying, so we'll give Nichol Kessinger the benefit of the doubt. I know some people don't feel that way, but
No, we don't feel that way at all, but we do appreciate your analysis.
if I had to pick a position, if I had to really be definitive, I would say that I'm more skeptical about his statements than I am about hers. So with all this is kind of a theory behind his motivation.
And the only reason he's more skeptical about Chris Watts is because he's the one that actually did the family annihilation. I think Watts was not bored. I think it was actually the opposite. Well, I think bored was part of it, James, but he was bored with their sex life, I believe, because Nichol Kessinger brought a bunch of new things, but he was also emasculated quite a bit. When you watch a lot of the videos, Shannan, no shade to victims ever, but she was a very strong woman, and a lot of times he seemed like he was emasculated in a lot of those videos, and he didn't speak up. He just let her just do whatever she wanted, and instead of speaking up, he just went and cheated instead of saying, hey, this is what I need. So yeah, maybe we need to put some of the blame on the media, particularly kids entertainment. Yeah, I agree, Davey. There's a massively unrealistic view of romance, and I always have to tell my kids and show them what real romance and a real relationship looks like. And I do that by having a real romance and a real relationship with the mother of my children. That's how you do it. You show them. That's how you teach them. You got to practice what you preach, folks.
Happened here. So if all these things were kind of true, if Nichol was distant and in a position of power that was kind of artificially inflated by Chris's inexperience, what was the mechanism? What actually happened? Well, it could be that he started to feel pressure. He started to feel like he was going to lose her if he didn't make some sort of bold move to break free from his family life. And essentially he breaks, which is consistent with the story he tells that he snapped. So again, this kind of goes to whether he did snap or whether it was premeditated, which is a whole nother discussion. But under this theory, he snaps. He can't.
Let's call it Will Smith and Jada Pinkett syndrome. I like that. And Nichol was probably whispering sweet nothings in Chris's ear and believed it. She was smart enough not to text, email, or we would have proof of her involvement. I agree. She was. And she was what did we say? She was a geologist or some kind of, someone could correct me. I've done a deep dive into this case because I can't understand family annihilators, and I still can't understand how she never got in trouble for anything because they never found a text message that involved her, which is absolutely insane. And that ping, when there was a ping at 6:15 a.m. by his house, I don't understand why they let that go. Hello, Giselle. Thank you for being here. I love your opinions. A lot of times they're different than ours, and I love having opinions that don't always match so we can talk about it. And she was gaga all over him, and he loved it. Oh, she pumped up his ego hard, folks.
Lose Nichol. She's become something that is not optional to him, which is a very dangerous way to think about another person. When you start to think of another person as a possession, that's a bad warning sign. So in essence, in his mind, maybe he had something he could not face losing. So the relationship became functionally manipulative, even if it wasn't Nichol's intention to make it manipulative. So it was really manipulative in a sense because of what Chris was doing. The self-deception, which is consistent with narcissism, kind of took over and led him to a very dark and tragic place. One of the key mysteries in this case is why Chris selected that particular day in August. It was August 13th, 2018, to commit the murders. Why not just continue the affair indefinitely or until something happened and everybody found out and there would be a lot of screaming and yelling, but nobody would have been killed? Maybe he was being pushed again internally because he put himself in a situation where he really...
It wasn't just internally. I'm going to help Dr. Grande out and tell him right after this video, we're going to watch Deception Detective, and he calls it out that she was probably pushing him and giving him an ultimatum, and there was probably a date that she had set in mind and was like, hey, by the end of the month, you better find an apartment. August 13th, I bet she said by September 1st, you better be moved out. I have a good feeling. She destroyed the sim and probably the memory, and back then, everything was not on the cloud like it is now. Yeah, Desert Moon, no evidence or probable cause, plus Shannan's family had said They were shown proof she wasn't involved. And yeah, you'll never hear me say, let's go after Nichol Kessinger. She did it. I won't say that. I'm very impartial on this case, but I do think that she has guilty knowledge and she has more knowledge than she gave to the cops. Absolutely. Do I think she should have been arrested? The laws don't support that, what we know.
It had to be with Nichol. I kind of mentioned that before. This did appear to be his ultimate objective. So if we look at kind of the theory of these murders, the affair, I don't think can be minimized. I actually think it was a major component. The affair and the mechanisms we see with immaturity and impulsivity and the passionate phase and all that, combined with...
I'll stop for 1 second, Melissa, since you asked me a couple times. Both of my children were birthed by my wife, and in California, no matter what, you have to adopt your children, even if you have them with somebody else. Even if someone else is carrying your egg, you still have to adopt them. So yes, I'm married. Yes, my children are mine, but yes, they're also adopted legally. So I had to go through extra things to have children. So when I see children that are hurt or I see a family annihilation, I can't understand why, because I had to go through so many hoops and so many things to do this for my children, to have children, and then this guy comes along and wipes out his whole family. As a matter of fact, maybe one day, Melissa, I will put a picture up when we're doing a members only of me adopting my daughter the day she was adopted. I have a picture of her. She was 4 months old. The judge said that was the first time in the history of the county that I live in that she's ever seen a child been adopted so fast. So just a side note, I have to adopt my children that are mine, and then you've got this guy wiping out his for no reason. Very sad.
Chris's situation and his really poor judgment led to these crimes. Again, we don't know this for sure, but I think the affair played a major role. I think when you look at this whole case, you're left thinking if the affair had never happened, the murders probably would not have happened either. But again, we can't really go back in time and change things and see what would have happened if circumstances were different. So we're left trying to kind of solve this mystery and kind of think this thing through with the information we have available. I do think that this case, including the affair component, brings a lot of interesting discussion on mental health and personality. And I think it is important we understand why people commit crimes like the crimes that Chris Watts committed. So I know whenever I talk about this case or really murders in general, there are a lot of different opinions. Some people may agree or disagree.
And that's okay. We still like your opinion and we appreciate it very much. And that brings us to Mr. Deception Detective. And now we're going to talk about Nichol Kessinger, and we're going to be able to blast her a lot more by what he says. I love his series. I've watched it so many times. When I say his series, he has a series on Nichol Kessinger, like a full series, and I think there's 6 episodes or 7 episodes, and I've watched all of them multiple times. So let's go together, folks.
So he had been working on his MyFitnessPal app and like programming like all the stuff he eats. And I just started going through them, and I was like trying to figure out like where his ratios were. And we actually spent a lot of time doing that because he'd asked me.
Remember, this is a response to what they talked about at the Lazy Dog. This has been going on for like a minute now. If someone tries to do this to you, let them talk, let them ramble, but you need to circle back. That's great he was trying to lose weight. It's great you helped him with his MyFitness app. But that doesn't tell me what you talked about at the Lazy Dog that night. So besides macronutrients, and she hasn't even said that's what they were talking about. She hasn't even said this was actually their discussion. So besides macronutrients, what else did you two talk about at Lazy Dog? Did Nichol Kessinger assist in or know about Chris's grisly crimes? I'm Deception Detective. I'm an attorney trained in statement analysis, and this channel exists to expose lies and manipulation.
And we love you, Deception Detective, so thank you very much. Everybody that knows my channel by now should know this man. I have a playlist with collaborations, and this guy just nails it. And we have the deception deck here, so hopefully I can find some of these. Maybe he'll call them out. This deception deck has many deception cards in here for Nichol Kessinger, not specifically, but there's a lot of deception in these, and let's watch.
In today's video, we'll analyze Nichol Kessinger's interview with authorities to determine if she had guilty knowledge. This is the 3rd video in my Nichol Kessinger series. In parts 1 and 2, we've already caught her in some lies. We've also seen some mistakes that the interviewers made with her. And we've had a glimpse into her relationship with Chris. I believe she applied immense pressure to him to leave his family. However, all that said, I am not convinced that she assisted him in planning, executing, or covering up his crimes, although I am open to the possibility because she did delete all of her text messages with Chris before coming to the police to cooperate. In my world, that means you forfeit your right to the benefit of the doubt. With all this in mind, we'll consider these points as we listen to Nicole's interview.
Because I was like, the way he made this sound, it wasn't, oh, she's this horrible person, or oh, I'm this horrible person. It was, her and I have drifted so far apart that it's kind of a mutual agreement that this is not going to.
Now you heard what she just said, that's a perception she got from him, and not just perception. She did say perception. She said she got the idea that they just drifted apart. He kind of told her they drifted apart and they're splitting up, and he met her and she's so great. So that's what she's telling them now. This is I'm playing all of his episodes all over the place. So even though he says there's 3, he's already got 6, I believe, episodes, and we've played them forward and backwards. It's kind of all over the place, and I plan on doing every single one of them. She definitely knew she was pregnant. And in this episode, we're talking about, this one's labeled How to Fool the Police. And we're also going to talk about a lot about Nichol Kessinger and the lies and expose her for them.
Work.
So in those 6 years, though, they had 2 children.
Yep.
And you said earlier you did not know she was pregnant until reading the newspaper.
Yep.
So that never came up in any conversation. There was no indications that was going on. He never hinted to anything like that. As far as you knew, he was just leaving her. He had 2 children, and that was the final take on that.
Yes, I think.
All right. So as I pointed out in my first part of this series, how to interrogate a suspect, I believe that the interrogators here did a very bad job at getting to the truth. And I don't know if they did that because they thought, hey, we've got Chris. At this point, I think he'd already confessed to the murders. And they're thinking, hey, let's just, he probably did it, whether or not she encouraged him or not. We need to keep her credibility as a witness in case we need her to testify against him. I don't know why they went so soft on her. In part 1, I gave.
Well, also they went soft on her because her dad was there, and I believe people say that her dad was tied in with the cops. We know that. We know that Nichol Kessinger knew because there was a "Oops, we did it again" baby announcement on Facebook. That was what really made this case blow up. Facebook was really at the height and the peak of its, of people exploding and being on Facebook as a social media platform. And Shannan announced her pregnancy with "Oops, we did it again." And when she did that, not too long after, Watts annihilated the family. And then after that, the whole thing blew up and it made national news and international news. So that was the whole thing. The "Oops, we did it again." So let's go with this. And before I do that, I'm going to say thank you, Bree, for gifting the 5 memberships. If you guys aren't a member, you're going to be a member now. Somebody is going to be, and believe me, we're coming up with the members only live soon, and it's going to be really freaking cool. Bree and I have a topic that we're going to talk about, that we talked about, that we're going to talk about. I haven't told you yet, so shh, it's a secret so far, but we're also going to talk about Guilty of Crime, which is me, and a lot of personal things, along with a case of our choice, which we think is a lighthearted case. We're going to tear somebody apart that's a convicted murderer, and so forth. Giselle, I hope you get gifted a membership today. And everybody in here that is not. Desert Moon, he wasn't allowed because she came forward on her own and wasn't a suspect. Right, she never was a suspect. He confessed immediately and told them that he would give a full confession if they just keep everybody out of it. He also told them that she was not involved.
Them the benefit of the doubt, even though I pointed out some mistakes that they made. But by this point, I've analyzed about maybe 40 minutes of this interview, and the softness doesn't seem to be leading to some sort of overarching strategy. It really looks like sloppy detective work. So the question here that he's been trying to figure out, and also people in my DD forum have been asking and positing their own theories. Did Nichol know that Shannan was pregnant before she claims to have known? In other words, did she know about it a week before the murders or a month?
She absolutely knew about it. She was on Facebook and she was looking at it. She had Google searches a year before they even got into a relationship. And do you want me to play the video of Oops, We Did It Again so you could see that? You're so funny, Lotus Spider 7, and that's why I love you guys. You just made me laugh. Yes, Nichol needs a Oops, I Did It shirt. I agree. I think we need some Watts Wednesday. Oops, I did it. We do need merch soon, though. Don't make me laugh. I'll play that video after.
Before the murders, or at a point in time before the murders where it would have led to a furious fight, for example, between her and Chris, in which she said, you need to get rid of that baby if you're going to be with me, or you need to get rid of your family permanently if you're going to be with me.
There you go.
So I'm not saying that's what happened, but I'm saying that's why the baby question is so important. And the way the detective has phrased these questions does not get us any closer to the truth. And I'm going to.
It absolutely doesn't. And in this interview, the dad is not there. So you could overhear, normally you'll see the dad in the other interviews. I don't see him there in this one. And so I do wonder why he's going so soft on her. Thank you, Eileen Levine. Thank you. Tell everybody about the channel. Thank you for saying that. I am a true blue. All of us are, because we're all crime crewers. Even if you're not a crime crew official member, you're still part of the crime crew, and we love you. I am new here, but seriously need more subscribers. I absolutely love the Deception Detective. Thank you. And so do we.
I'm going to point out the mistakes he made so you can avoid them in your own life if you ever have to interview someone. So I'm going to rewind. Listen closely.
It's not going to work.
So in those 6 years, though, they had 2 children.
Yep.
And you said earlier you did not know she was pregnant until reading the newspaper.
Yep.
You said earlier you did not know she was pregnant until reading the newspaper. What is wrong with that question? Why does it not get us to the truth? Well, Nichol answered yep. If Nichol had known Shannan was pregnant a month prior, could she answer that question in the affirmative and pass a polygraph and be telling the complete truth so she doesn't even feel the stress of having to lie? Yes, she could. Because he's asking her if she told him earlier that she found out about the pregnancy in the newspaper. What is he really asking? He's asking her to confirm whether or not she said something.
But he did tell her what to say. He said he actually gave her a question and the answer. Dee calls everything out, and we all just talked about this before that question came up. She absolutely knew. They announced it on Facebook, and it's interesting that she said that she read it in the newspaper. I know people still read newspapers, and this was in 2018, but that's absolute ridiculousness for her to say she read it in the newspaper. Such a lie, such a huge lie. Red flag.
So if she had told him, hey, I've been to the moon and it tastes like cheese, he could ask her, earlier you told me you've been to the moon and it tastes like cheese. Is that correct? Yes.
Oh my God.
She could pass a polygraph. Does it mean she's been to the moon and tasted it and it tastes like Gouda? Of course not. That is a giant rookie interview faux pas. And it's not the first mistake we've seen this guy make. So I encourage you to watch my entire Nichol Kessinger series after this one, if this is your first video in the series.
And we are going to watch all of them. We still have, I think, 2 left to go. Maybe you can correct me, DD, after. I'll go through my videos and see which one. We're going to play all of them. I believe there's 6 of them now in the Nichol Kessinger series, and I think he's planning on doing another one if we can get to 50,000 on all of them, which I think we already bypassed that. So, yeah, bypassed, surpassed, whatever. Love DD, and we're going to do all of them because I love him so much in the videos and his analysis.
Now let's look at the other errors he makes. So the first error is asking a question that is not specific enough to actually get you the truth.
So that never came up in any conversation.
That never came up in any conversation. What is wrong with that question? It's a loaded question. So for example, if you stole my sandwich out of my fridge, or if I suspect you did, and I say, you never took my sandwich out of the office fridge, right? And you say never, you're just parroting a word that was in my question, which is very easy to do under the stress of a lie. The proper way to ask a question is, do you know what happened to my sandwich? Have you seen my sandwich? Did you take my sandwich? And a question that is not loaded with the response. So he's asking these follow-up questions in the negative, which is interesting because it's almost as if he wants her to answer in the negative so they can move on. In other words, all the errors he's made so far in these interviews all point in one direction, towards feeding her answers to not be a suspect. And it could simply be that, hey, we've got our guy, he confessed. I think he already confessed at this point. So, let's not waste too much effort on this girl. We know she wasn't involved in the actual murders based on the evidence we have. He gave a full confession. So, let's just go easy. Let's not dig up too much about this girl. I really don't know what they were thinking. That's just a guess at this point. But when all the mistakes that someone makes,
what I think they were thinking is they just wanted to get as much information as they could. They either had Chris Watts already confess at this point and just wanted to see what she knew, if there was anything additional. I don't think that they thought she was a suspect. I think he may have, and if I had the timeline correct, he may have already confessed, or they were already on to him and they thought he was the only person that did it at this point. They didn't think there was another suspect, because I can't imagine any other reason why they would have done that. And her saying that is absolutely ridiculous. I'll stop this for 1 second and I'll put the other one up just so you can see that there's no way that she didn't see this with all the searches that she did on Facebook. There's absolutely no way that they didn't know. All right, we got to watch this.
We did it again. I like that shirt.
All right, guys, that was definitely a nervous laugh. I'm gonna play this again and make it a little bit bigger because it was on her camera phone, and we pulled myself down here, and I watched this over and over too. Listen to his nervous laugh. Now at this point, he was already, I believe, either having an affair or he had some Tinder profiles up. He did tell Shannan at one point that he wanted to have a baby, because in the text messages later, you see them talking about her saying, you wanted a baby, you're the one that wanted another one. And then he didn't after he started having an affair. So you can see, let's watch his nervous laugh and his demeanor.
We did it again. I like that shirt. Really?
Really.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
So pink means...
That's just a test.
I know. They're just the pink is going to be girls.
I don't know. Just a test.
That's awesome. Guess when you want to, it happens.
Yeah, wow. Wow is right, folks. If you guys actually, pay attention really close in that video, he did not want that. He made that nervous sigh and his giggle that was just, he genuinely doesn't sound excited. He was, act happy. And she knew it. She could tell. Did you hear how irritated that she was? I know that Nichol Kessinger saw that. They saw the search records and they know that she was on Facebook all the time looking up their stuff. So there's no way Nichol Kessinger didn't know that she was pregnant. Okay, we're going to get back to the deception detective video, but I had to show that because it was definitely like that. And that's why this case blew up, was because of that oops, we did it again video. And then afterwards it came out that the family was annihilated. So that just blew up internationally all over. And we're still today in 2024 watching this.
Point in one direction, it usually indicates that the mistakes are deliberate. When someone's actually incompetent or sloppy, mistakes can go in all directions. It's kind of like if you go to a store and the cashier always gives you incorrect change, but it always benefits them. They always give you not quite enough change. Well, it kind of suggests that they might be better at math than you think. It might not all just be innocent errors. So listen again. How never is in the question itself. It's called a loaded question. Interviewers should never do that.
Yep.
And you said earlier you did not know she was pregnant until reading the newspaper.
Yep.
So that never came up in any conversation. There was no indications that was going on.
That never came up in any conversation. Never is in the question. There was never an indication, or there was no indication, whatever he just said. The negative response is in the question itself. Also, I don't think it's a coincidence that Nichol said never, right? She literally parroted the word from the question, which if someone's being interrogated and they're going to lie, is the way they will do it. They will parrot back words.
He never hinted to anything like that. As far as you knew.
See, he's giving her the answers. He's literally asking her a question, but he's giving her the answers. He never hinted anything, and then he waits. No. He never told you? No. You're funny, Lotus Spider. This is our new Coach Complete until Coach Complete comes back. The only person that was excited, the only one that was excited was the freaking dog, and you're right.
He was just leaving her. He had 2 children, and that was the final take on that.
Yes. I think.
So as far as you knew, he was leaving her. The other error that this guy is making here is all of his questions restrict her. So it's all about, did he tell you Shannan was pregnant? Did he indicate Shannan was pregnant? Did he do anything other than indicate to you that he was leaving Shannan? What did the interviewer fail to ask her? He failed to ask her, did you think Shannan was pregnant? Did you do any research on your own to determine if Shannan was pregnant? Did you know Shannan was pregnant? So he never actually asks about her knowledge. He asks her questions about knowledge getting to her, all in the negative. And then at the beginning, he asked her a question of whether or not.
Hello, friend. Watts Obsession. I'm obsessed with your Watts Obsession. This is an awesome creator. Go over to Watts the Obsession channel. I was watching her the other day, and I love her show. She has people come up, and I actually tried to get on there, but she had another gentleman on there. And so I emailed her and said, hey, let's collaborate sometime on the Chris Watts case. Thank you, Watts Obsession, for coming in the chat. Everybody go to her channel and flood her, please. Thank you for being here. That was awesome. I just fangirled on you. Sorry.
She said something.
Hey, Mom. I wanted to say, Chris.
This is almost like a catalog of interviewing mistakes all around amazing. The pregnancy. So to answer Hazak Q,
how do I get so lucky in this community? Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you. We're gonna come over and flood your channel. All right, let's listen.
In the DD forum, did Nichol know about the baby about the pregnancy before she said she did? It's hard to tell. She could be telling the truth here, or she could be lying. The way the questions were literally phrased in the worst way possible for us to deduce the truth. So whether or not Nichol is innocent or guilty, if she was actually innocent, these investigators did a huge disservice to her by asking questions that were so weak that they don't let us assess the veracity of her answers, because the questions themselves are so limited in scope and so loaded and so poorly worded that even if she was telling us the truth and answering them all honestly, it doesn't help us know her innocence because they're so limited. Also, if she's guilty, they did a big disservice to society. I don't care if Chris confessed to the murders and carried them out all alone.
And neither do we. Sorry, I had to stop for a minute. My mic was not muted, but my daughter wanted to come and say hi and give me a kiss. So there it is. And hello, my missing, what is this? Peace, Jack. Again, thank you. I didn't mean to be interrupted, but the daughter's got to come in. Thanks again, Watts Obsession. I'm definitely coming to your channel, and hopefully I can get up there and talk sometime about this case because it's awesome. And I love your channel. All right, let's go.
If she helped him plan, or if she was an accessory to them, or an accessory after the fact and helped him cover it up, or by deleting her text messages with him, she destroyed evidence. I don't want her to be able to cut her hair and change her name and move across the street from some other family. I want her locked up. So whether she's innocent or guilty, I do believe that the investigators in this case did a big disservice to everyone involved, from what I've seen so far. Now, maybe
I agree with that too, and I'm sure Watts, the obsession, I'm sure you are too. I'm sure you think and have lots of thoughts, and I'm going to go listen to your backstories after this. Adam Montgomery sentencing tomorrow. I'll check that out. Please, somebody email me what time, and I'll go check it out. But busy schedule. If you can email me what time, that'd be great. And thank you for saying Miracle Hearts hi to my daughter. Her name is Reese, like the candy, Reese's Pieces. I will be on your panel. If you can put in the chat what days you were on, I will put it on my timer and put it on my calendar so I can get up on your open panel. I just don't know what your schedule is like. And if you have one, just let me know, that'd be great. I'm glad you saw the cute little hands. My daughter brought me some more shades in here. She thought I needed more shades, and she gave me a kiss. And I didn't want her to be on camera. So she's been on here before, but she had a mustache, and her name was Bob that day. So we don't really know what... we don't really know. What do you mean, who's female? Watts the Obsession is a female. You see her picture? She's a beautiful lady. Watts the Obsession. All right, let's keep going.
maybe this is all leading somewhere, but from what I've seen so far, these look like very sloppy, basic mistakes. And in fact, the mistakes are so frequent and so egregious that it almost makes me wonder if they were just trying to nip this in the bud now that they had Chris, as if it were deliberate.
I know why he lied to me. He lied to me because if I'd have known that he had a child on the way, I'd have never wasted my time with him in the first place. Like, none of this would ever even occur if he would have just told me the truth.
So do you think if he found out that you, if, let's say this week you guys were to look at some apartments, and this is hypothetical, but you've never found out that his wife was pregnant, would that have changed anything? Like you just said, if I knew his wife was pregnant, I wouldn't be in this picture. So if his wife was not pregnant, and forgive me, but if he takes her out of the picture, you're never going to know that she was pregnant, right?
What do you mean takes her out of the picture? Like,
if he murdered her, she's out of the picture. You're never going to know if she was pregnant. If he can get away with murder, you're not going to. I got divorced from my wife. Do you understand what I'm saying here?
And frankly, I don't follow where this guy's trying to go either. No.
And if you notice now, her dad's in the room. Earlier, we didn't see him in the frame. I don't know if he came in between then or not. I didn't particularly look at the time, but he wasn't in the room, and the cop was still very soft on her. I have no idea why. And yeah, I don't understand where he's going with the question, but it's not even a question. None of these are questions. They're just, he's saying a question, but he's giving her the answer.
Nichol already told us that if she had known Shannan was pregnant, it would have been a deal breaker.
I'm there.
So it is important when Nichol found out that Shannan was pregnant. If Nichol knew beforehand, she just told us herself.
She did know beforehand, Dee Dee. We all know she knew beforehand. We're probably 90% sure. And Watts Obsession, everybody, she's going to be live this Friday night. I'm going to go and make sure I have all the notifications on so I can go on her panel. I will definitely come on your panel on Friday night. Thank you so much for letting me know. Everybody come to Watch the Obsession Friday night so you can watch me on her panel and watch her, and we can vibe together like Dee Dee and I do. All right, let's go. She knew that the baby was coming.
It would have been a big deal. Maybe she would have pushed Chris to do something dramatic. Like, you need to get rid of that baby, or who knows what she could have said, even in just the heat of an argument or something less, and then how Chris interpreted it. But she already told us it was a big deal to her. The convoluted questions this interview is asking also displease me.
Here, if she's gone,
but this
don't leave.
Hypothetically,
Please.
Yeah,
Don't
hypothetically, if
All right, now I understand as well. So I've been fairly patient in the first two videos in this.
The dad said, "Don't lead." That was the first time I heard that. Again, I haven't watched this one with you all, but the dad told him not to lead. What? That's not her attorney.
Series with the interviewers, with this interviewer, because I figured he's probably going somewhere with this. But now that we're in the third part of the series, this is no Piers Morgan or Dr. Phil situation where we can kind of figure out what they're doing.
Okay, you heard it yourself. She 1,000,000% knew about the baby. Dee Dee's analysis on this aspect is money. He is brilliant. I agree. Period. I am a Dee Dee fan forever and 2 days.
To keep the people on board as they get to the truth. So if you've seen any of my analysis of Piers Morgan interviews or Dr. Phil, lots of people don't like them. I think that sometimes they do a terrible job and sometimes they both do a great job. It kind of just depends on the case in their case. Here, I haven't seen anything that looks like good technique to me. And the father being here doesn't help. So I see lots of comments of people asking why Nichole's dad was allowed to be in the interview. It's because she's cooperating. So she's not under arrest.
And to be in the interview and tell the cop not to lead. As a matter of fact, he's doing her justice by giving her leading questions and then giving her the answers. So that's very interesting. I just caught that in this particular interview or portion of the interview, because there's many portions of this interview that we're going to continue playing each week. And then we'll find something new to do for Watts Wednesday.
I understand that they're trying to get her to continue cooperating. If she lawyered up and went silent, everything would change. They'd stop getting info from her. Yes. She asked for her dad to be there. Fair enough. If it makes her more comfortable to talk, I probably would have let him in as well. However, I would have exercised some more authority over him to shut him up. And this interview seems to be allowing everyone to walk all over him.
You guys are great.
Now, I have been told in the comments that his wife or something, or he has a podcast. I would be curious if he saw this video to explain what his strategy was. So I still allow for the possibility that this is a strategy. Maybe earlier on before this interview, they seemed very skittish, like they were ready to walk off and lawyer up. So he had to go very soft and use kid gloves with them. But that doesn't seem to be the case here. So it's something worth exploring in this series. What the actual interview strategy was here.
If she, you understand where I'm going. If you didn't know,
you're leading into questions that are nothing with your.
If you didn't know, though,
wait, Nick,
that she was there.
Did you hear what I said?
I'm following you. I just want her to answer a question that relates to. She said something that's important. That if he didn't have a child on the way, or if she didn't know that, she would have continued the relationship, right?
But he killed his kids.
Right. So the interviewer has understood that Shannan's pregnancy was a big deal to Nichol. Maybe even a big enough deal to end the entire relationship and force Chris to do something dramatic, at least in his mind, to save it.
I'm on it.
But earlier, he asked so many poor questions about when she found out about it that he is struggling to understand what the truth is.
He absolutely is struggling, asking poor questions, giving her answers, and then the dad is directing. Miracle Hearts, you're right. Who's the boss here? We don't know. I think the boss is Nichol Kessinger at this point. I mean, look at her. She's like this right now. She's getting frustrated, and they're letting her lead with her dad. Absolutely disgusting.
This is his fourth attempt to find out when she found out about the pregnancy. So at least he realizes its importance to the case. But he is ineffective at getting to the fact of the matter of when she found out.
At what point does he think that I'm going to be in a relationship?
I'm not talking about the children. I'm just talking specifically about her. If you only knew, if the kids were still here and he called you and said, I'm divorced from my wife, and he gets away with this, do you understand what I'm thinking from his aspect?
I still wouldn't do it. I still wouldn't do it because I'd be like, where did she go?
Okay.
Because I'm under the impression that she's a really good mom. Like, he never bashed her momming skills. Like, no, I wouldn't, no.
Okay.
No.
And that, you see where I'm trying to take that?
Yes.
So
see where I'm trying to take that? Why aren't you just asking the questions? I mean, they never charged her for anything, Lollipop, and they could charge you 20 years later for something if they found something. So yeah, they could charge her technically for something. They can come after you. Look at the Golden State Killer. He got away for how many years? They wheeled him into the courtroom 30 years later or whatever, they can charge her if they found something, but I doubt they will.
You guys never had a conversation about the child, period.
I didn't.
All right, another bad question. You guys never had a conversation about the child, period. Another loaded question. If you were trying to get someone to tell you the truth, right? You're trying to get to the truth and make it hard for them to lie and make it easy for them to respond honestly. You do not ask loaded questions. Did he ever tell you about the pregnancy? Did you guys ever have a conversation about pregnancy? Those are better ways to ask the question. Now, sometimes, let's say you're questioning someone on,
Yeah, all good information here. And thanks, Watts the Obsession. Go out, get a walk, get some fresh air. Good to see you. I'll watch your premiere tonight, and I'll see you on Friday. What a good chat today, folks. Thank you all for being such good people, and I love the crime crew.
with an agenda, right? You want to make them look bad. Then you ask loaded questions. So, for example, if they were pursuing her hard, we could expect them to say, well, he told you about the baby, didn't he? Or they could even bluff, right? We have him in the other room. He told us the baby was a big issue to you, wasn't it? So when police ask loaded questions of a suspect, typically they're asking it in the affirmative. He's asking these in the negative. If you're interviewing a job candidate, don't ask a loaded question in affirmative or negative. You want to get to the truth. You're not trying to pin something on someone. Or for example, in my example with the sandwich, let's say I really don't like that person. I really think they took my sandwich. Then I might ask a loaded question, but it would of course be in the affirmative. You took my sandwich, didn't you? You just had break, right? Did you take my sandwich? Something along those lines.
I didn't know at all.
All right.
All right, so let's rewind.
I'm trying to take that.
Yes.
So you guys never had a conversation about the child, period.
You guys never had a conversation about the child, period. If I'm telling the truth, I would say never. And if I'm lying, I would say never. What does Nichol say?
I didn't know at all.
All right.
I didn't know at all. What did she?
And we all know that she did know. And Watts the Obsession just said, what was your answer? 1,000,000% or 1,010%? That's a high number. But we all know now that she did know. And I don't know why she was lying about that if she had nothing to do with it. I think she does have guilty knowledge, absolutely. And I do think she feels guilty about it. And karma is a bitch. It's a hard bitch, I'll tell you what. But I don't think that she completely doesn't live with it to this day and wake up and think about that whole family that's gone and that she probably pushed Chris over the edge. I don't think that she doesn't think about it. Maybe not every day, but it stays with her.
She do? She didn't answer the question. The question was, did you have a conversation about the child? She gave a non-responsive answer. She said, I didn't know. The question was not whether or not she knew of the baby. It was if they had a conversation about the child. In a courtroom, that wouldn't fly. With this investigator, however, it apparently does. The other thing to note here is she said, I didn't know ever. What is ever? It's an intensifier. And if you have a copy of the deception deck, which is my 52 favorite rules for spotting lies and manipulation, drop it in the chat. Let me know that you spotted that yourself. For everyone else, I will read the rule about intensifiers so you can see how it applies to Nichole's response here.
Right. Absolutely.
So ever is an intensifying adverb. Each card in the deception deck has a different rule. The rule is on the back so you can practice like a flashcard to memorize it. And it also has an example. So I'm going to read you the rule about intensifiers. Remember, he asked if they ever had a conversation about the child. She, A, gave a non-responsive answer. She said, I didn't know, which wasn't the question. And then she said, ever.
Ever.
Words such as very, really, totally, and super, and ever are often used for persuasion. Liars frequently employ these terms unprompted, reflecting their insecurity about the believability of their statements. However, it's important to note that if these words are used in response to direct accusations, as in, I already told you I really am innocent, their usage can be considered appropriate. In other words, Nichol had no reason to say the word ever. She was actually being asked the question in the negative. She wasn't even being accused of having a conversation.
Right.
Which suggests that she probably felt insecure about her answer because she knows she's lying. So intensifying adverbs used unprompted are a great indicator of deception. Like, I didn't skip class, Mom. Really, I swear. Or I was super early to class every day last week. I was never tardy.
Oh, yeah, we hear that all the time from our kids, right? My daughter says that all the time. I never did that. I never ate the candy, and she's got chocolate all over her face. We can learn a lot from kids, everybody. And I would like to know more about the Anadarko lawsuit money. I know she did get fired after that. I've never looked into her like that or found a lawsuit, but I would believe that she did get the money, and I wonder how much money she did get, because she did directly get fired after this case. So if anybody knows, let me know. And we're going to work, or I'm going to say work with, we're going to talk to the Watts, the obsession, and maybe she's going to spill the beans on that, because she said she'll spill the beans on how she knows that Nichol Kessinger knew absolutely that Shannan was pregnant.
Right? That person needs to be looked into more if they're not being accused of being late to class.
All right. And by your words, if you did know, you would have ended the relationship.
Well, because it wouldn't have made sense to me that he's like, I'm getting separated. Oh, by the way, I have a baby on the way. It's like,
That's 15 weeks.
You are a liar. You're just trying to sleep with me. That's what I would have probably interpreted that as, and I'd have just shut that off at work, and that would have been the end of it.
Okay. All right. We can move past that.
Yeah, sure.
Week that he comes back from North Carolina, you don't remember, somewhere in the first couple of weeks of August.
Yeah, I think it was the second week, but I don't remember off the top of my head.
So we'll just use August as a time frame. Is that fair? Because you know he left in July and he comes back in August. How many times do you think you see him?
I saw him a few times. I saw him this past Saturday. I saw him the Wednesday before that. And he wanted to see me more. I was the only one in my space. I was like, nope, your kids are home. Go hang out with your kids.
All right, so this is also interesting. Lots of times we get little hints at the pressures she applied to Chris to leave his family. So as I said, I don't think she helped him plan or carry out or cover up the murders so far from what I've seen. However, I do think she's deceptive, as I just pointed out. I think she knew Shannan was pregnant before she said she did. It probably led to lots of fights. It probably led to their ultimatum, the ultimatum that I think she gave him while he was in North Carolina.
I'm glad I'm hearing this, because I do think there was an ultimatum there. Absolutely an ultimatum where, not that she said, hey, off your family or I'm out of here, but move out by September 1st or I'm gone. You have 2 weeks to get out of there. You've been dragging it long enough. Get rid of the wife. And maybe not in that way, or maybe in that way, we don't know. But we know that she thinks about it probably, but she probably doesn't care. I'm sure she's moved on to many different men since 2018.
But you can also see here, we saw this in part 2 of my series, in my video, Manipulated into Murder, where she said, well, he wanted to see me more, and, I didn't want to see him every day. Go spend time with your kids. So as she talks, she leaks the sort of tactics she used to manipulate him. What did she leak there? That she was punishing him for spending time with his kids.
Yep.
Right. I'm not going to hang out with you. I'm not sleeping with you. Go hang out with your kids. You keep talking about your kids. You want to see your kids and do all this stuff with your kids. Well, go hang out with your kids. Right. That's almost the tone she used when she's telling the police about this. Right. So as she's trying to soften it for the police, she gives us a clue to the tone of how she's saying these things. And manipulators will often do this, where they tell you the exact truth, but they leave out the tone and the context. And in my Jada Pinkett Smith series, we've seen her do this 1,000 times in interviews, where if she quotes herself word for word, it sounds fine. But if you apply the mocking, belittling tone she probably used with Will, the context completely changes. So here in part 2, we deduced that she is probably very jealous of Chris. Nichol appeared to have punished Chris for spending time with his children instead of her.
And that's a key point in this whole case, is that she did punish him and she did minimize their relationship. And we all know that now. I call it a relationship. It was an affair. She minimized the affair completely. She was with him a lot. We saw a lot of the pictures. We saw the text messages that were left. We saw the ones from Chris's phone, and then there was ones deleted from her side. So she minimized and acted like he was the one chasing her, when in fact she was Googling them a year before this even happened, and she knew all about the family and about his kids and that he was married. And nothing about Shannan's Facebook page ever showed that they were having problems. In Shannan's Facebook world, everything was great, and she had the best husband in the world, and everything looked loving on Shannan's page because she was also promoting her product on that page. So everything was great. She never had anything bad on there. So Nichol saw that all.
For example, saying that when he was with his kids, he needed to be alone with them. In other words, pick between them and her. And here she did it again. When was he alone? When he needed to go be with his kids.
Saturday. I saw him the Wednesday before that. And he wanted to see me more. I was only one of my.
Right. He wanted to see her more.
See?
So it's not like they're both saying, hey, let's take some time apart. I'll go spend time with my kids. You go do whatever you want to do. Go to the gym. He wanted to see her, and she said no. And then she reveals to us why she said no.
Down in my space. I was like, nope, your kids are home. Go hang out with your kids.
Right. Nope, your kids are home. Go hang out with your kids. Since we're an hour and 15 minutes into this interview, she's starting to let the tone that she actually uses with Chris slip, right? So she repeated that, recited it, probably the way she actually said to Chris. Right, can we hang out tonight? Nope, go spend time with your kids. Go spend time with those kids you love so much. She's starting to wear down a little bit.
And she's lying completely because she wanted Chris to, she didn't have any children and she wanted to give Chris his first son is what she said. So we heard that. And even though he was already going to have his first son, which was Nico, she told him she wanted to give him that. So that's a big fat lie as well. She knew that. She fantasized about Chris. She fantasized about marrying him. She looked up wedding dresses. We know all of this now, and it's crazy to go back and listen to her lie like this and not have any repercussions at all. Miracle Hearts 2 says people have hypothesized that Chris was going to light the tanks on fire and pose it like an accident. He brought a gas can. He did, in fact, bring a gas can, and we saw him loading that into the car by the neighbor's camera. Company just had an explosion with 1 dead and 3 injured. And Anadarko doesn't exist anymore. Somebody bought that company. And the house, the Watts house, their family just is selling it now, the Millers. So I was going to get into that more. There's some domestic violence issues with them. So we'll talk about that another day. But very interesting things we learned.
Earlier in the interview, she really softened it up, right? She said stuff like, almost like she was a marriage counselor.
Yep.
Well, I told him that he should really spend time with his kids because he's such a great father. So, go see what your kids are doing. Make sure they're okay. Even back then, though, as she was buttering it up, we deduced what it really meant. She was being manipulative. She was trying to make her actual words sound better than they actually were. What was this when she was telling him to go spend time with his kids? It was a punishment. Probably for not giving her enough attention or not being available when she wanted him to be available because his wife and children were around. Something along those lines.
And even on Wednesday, I cut it short. Like he came and hang out with me for a few hours.
Once again, I cut it short. Not that Chris cut it short or that we cut it short.
Yeah, and when she does say she cut it short, that means she was punishing him, folks. I mean, that clearly just said when he came to hang out, she cut it short. So that when you cut something short, you're punishing somebody, right? If someone comes to hang out and you get mad and you say, go home, that's a punishment to them. Why did she cut it short? Let's hear.
Typically when people are in a couple, they say we went to Six Flags. We left the movie early because it was boring. Not, I cut the movie short, even though he wanted to stay.
Hours, and then I was like, go chill with your kids. Okay. I was always like,
do you know specifically where you guys?
Right, and then now she's realizing probably that she's leaking a little bit too much of the tone that she used with Chris. Right, I was really respectful with his kids. Mm-hmm. That's not what it sounds like. It sounds like she was belittling his relationship with his kids and using it against him to punish him. That's what it really sounds like. Of course, even if you agree with everything I'm saying about how manipulative and unlikable she is, we all must understand that does not mean she's a murderer. It doesn't mean she encouraged him to kill his family. Doesn't mean she encouraged him to do anything dramatic. Now, might they have joked about it on some app where that she hid from us? Yes. Or in those text messages that she deleted? Yeah. But so far, I haven't seen any evidence that she has guilty knowledge about how the family died or in the planning stages or how it would have been covered up.
Guys went. Did you meet at your house? Did you guys go to any restaurants? Did you go to establishments? Where'd you go?
Last Wednesday, he came to my house, and this past Saturday we went to what's the name of that? bar that we used to go to. It's not the same, the Lazy Dog, but it's the one off of 144th and 925. I think it's 144th up there.
And it's the Lazy Dog?
Yes.
Did he ever mention a Rockies game that night?
No, I don't think so. But the Broncos were playing.
Okay.
That's actually a lie too, because if you go back to the last episode that we did, we saw the text messages and they were talking about the Rockies game and maybe it being cut short. Unless he went to another Rockies game, she's definitely lying about that. And I like this we card that Deception Detective has in his deck. And I have to stop and say it reminds me of the Madeline Soto case, Jennifer Soto. And if you know that case, she uses we all the time in the interviews, even though Jennifer Soto supposedly wasn't there, allegedly wasn't there with the unaliving of Madeline. And she uses we, which means the word we conveys a sense of plurality and partnership. Liars sometimes misuse we, indicating a partnership that wouldn't exist if their story were true. That's interesting because she says we the whole time in the Jennifer Soto, Stephen Stern's Madeline Soto case, and that was a big fat lie. So I like this we card a lot. It works for many things.
Which we couldn't see because they sat us in a crappy spot. So it's okay because it's preseason. But
so do you recall what time you went there?
No, I remember. Well, kind of. So he had to get a babysitter that night.
Do you know who that was?
Somebody who's really young. I remember I asked him who his babysitter was, and he's like, "We have two. This girl's only 17, but the other one's out of town. So this girl's going to stay, and she doesn't do overnights. So I got to be back by 10." And I remember her saying that, and him saying that. And I don't know what time he got to my house. It was between, I want to say like 5:30. It might have been 5, but I don't think so because I think the babysitter, if I remember correctly, showed up at like 4:30 or something, and he was like, "I want to spend time getting my kids acclimated to her, and then I will come."
So his children didn't even know her.
Oh no, they knew her, but he was saying like he likes to like stay there for a little while. He doesn't just like walk out the door when they show up. It's like a transitional thing, and so that's why I'm saying I don't know how long.
That almost sounded like it irritated her too when she said that. Oh yeah, he likes to. He says he likes to stay there and just doesn't want to walk out. It's like a transitional thing. Didn't that sound like an irritator that he stayed there longer and didn't just bounce and go see her right away? Wow, she lets out a lot of information. Oh, that's a good song. You hear that? That's my timer to go pick up Reese. But since Reese is already here, we don't have to pick up Ben.
I want to say like 5:30, and then he had to be back by 10. So he left at like 9 something to be back by 10.
So he picked you up. What was he driving?
No, he didn't pick me up. He came to my house. We drove my truck.
Okay. So he gets to your house. You know what he was driving to get to your house?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember. I'm pretty sure he usually drives that Lexus.
That Lexus. So I've skipped over maybe like 10 minutes just because they were fairly slow earlier between part 2 and this video, part 3 of my Nichol Kessinger analysis. But it is interesting that whenever she refers to something that belonged or was used by Shannan, she refers to it as that. So that Lexus. Earlier she said the Lexus was picked and bought by Shannan. And Silver Spoon on the forum has a great list, right? So that house, those two, that thing, those guys, the couple.
I love how he calls this out, and he can just use a deck like that. Well, he doesn't use it. He created this deck that will help all of you, and it helps me decipher these interviews and even people in life. But Kristen, I appreciate you calling this out. When they interviewed Chris about burying Shannan, we said we had a shovel. He said we twice while describing the process. So that's very interesting because who was the we that was with him? And thank you, Joyce. We love you being here.
That, whenever it comes to Shannan, even Shannan's Lexus that Chris was driving is that instead of his Lexus, for example, or the Lexus. Why is that? It reveals a little bit of her attitude towards Shannan, I think. And this is also in the Deception deck.
Absolutely.
This versus that. The word this often suggests emotional closeness in contrast to that. Liars sometimes misuse this, revealing a closeness that typically wouldn't exist if the story were true. In other words, if I say that kid, it means the kid's over there, and I might not actually like that kid. Whereas if I say this kid, it means they're close to me, and I probably like them. In other words, the fact that Nichol always says that when referring to, even earlier, she referred to Shannan's job in one of the segments that I skipped. She said, like, she's a sales rep, or I don't really know what to call that. Instead of, I don't know what to call her, or I don't know what the title is for the job she does, or any neutral language indicates some distance between her and Shannan, which.
And does anybody ever hear her say Shannan at all? Anybody at all? I don't. I never hear her say Shannan's name. And the reason I listen for that is because Shannan's name is said different in the interviews or when they read the statement. When Chris gets when he gets life in prison, the dad calls her, or Shannan's dad calls her Shannan. And other people call her Shannan too because they don't know her name, but her name, she pronounced it as Shannan. So I never hear Nichol Kessinger say her name. Anybody else? Has anyone else heard her say her name at all?
Of course, we can expect. She is cheating with Shannan's husband on Shannan, so I doubt that she particularly likes her. So we shouldn't read into it too much, but it is a good opportunity for me to get that rule out there so you guys can have it in your toolbox.
Right. But he doesn't always park it in my complex because the parking, there's not good spaces. So where you guys pick me up at, a lot of times he'll just park out there because there's room.
Okay.
So that kind of works so that because there's just not a lot of room in my apartment complex. But off the top of my head, I don't know what he was driving.
What kind of truck do you drive?
I drive a Toyota 4Runner.
Okay. So you guys take your 4Runner to the Lazy Dog.
Yep.
And you said they sat you in crappy locations. Where were you inside the bar?
When you walk in, you just hang a right, and we were like one of the first two booths on the right when you walk in the door. It's just not it's a good spot, but just not for the TVs. And we actually went to the other Lazy Dog. We went to the one that you and me go to. Where's that on? Federal and 120th. It's 120th and Federal, and we went there, and they have a different menu. And I was like, I don't want to eat this food, so we should go to the other one.
So initially, you go to the 120th location. Did you actually get seated?
Kind of, sort of. They were like cleaning off a table, and we were standing there, just kind of looking at the beer menu and the food menu. And I was like, I don't want this. And so we left.
6 o'clock? Probably
Somewhere around there, 6:30. And then we left and went to the other one, and we ate dinner.
And you're in that first or second booth right to the right of the door. I'm just asking because if they have video, we want to be able to verify that. So that's why it's important. And you're there for how long?
I don't know. Probably we didn't stay for dessert. So I don't know. How long does the restaurant take? Like an hour and a half?
And I've never been to the Lazy Dog.
I don't know. Probably about an hour and a half. And then we went back to my house for a little bit. Hung out at my house for a little while. And then he had to leave. And then he left.
Do you recall what time you left?
Off the top of my head, no. I remember he was.
I like how she has all the details, but then she doesn't know how he left. And she just says, bop, bop, bop. He came over to my house, and then he had to leave, and then he left. I wonder what happened in between that. He came over to her house. They went in the room, had some crazy sex, and then he left? Or did they talk about what? Did they talk about him moving out? Did she say, hey, if you don't move out by September 1st, we're done? No information in between. Just bop, 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 bop. Wow. I just caught that right now.
It's like going to be late to be back at 10. I think there's a text message where he starts texting me when he's home at his house.
Okay.
So you can probably figure that out. And I remember I texted him back and I was like, damn, that was quick. Or wow, that was really quick. He's like, yeah, I even had time to stop at the ATM or stop at the gas station, stop somewhere to get money to pay the babysitter.
Okay.
And I was just like thinking like.
All right. So I don't know.
Really quickly, I'll answer that. I've seen it a couple times. You can get the deception deck. Now, just go to @Deception Detective, or you can just Google Deceptive Deck and you'll be able to find it online. I don't have two moderators today. Bree's here. I'm not sure where Carly is. I think she's busy working on her house. But if I had another moderator, I'd ask her to drop it. Bree, if you can, drop the link to the Deception Detective deck. That would be great. It's fantastic and it's a must-have.
Know what the significance of the Lazy Dog is? Like, is something supposed to have happened? If you know, please let me know in the comments or in the forum why they're asking so many questions about what they did that night. Because I don't think this trip to the Lazy Dog was any time around the
There it
murders,
is.
was it? So if someone lets me know that this is really important, we can deep dive into it. But so far, it just sounds like one of her, vague responses, right? So she's probably telling the truth, but she self-edits a lot and she uses lots of words to sort of minimize details as she edits things that she doesn't think.
It's in the
And
chat.
it was really fast. But I think he was still like a little late coming back, but nothing too drastic. So he probably left my house like somewhere around 9:30.
In fact, there's a good post in the DD forum about this.
There you go.
By Carrie Berry. So she watched this section of the interview and she correctly notes that Nichol uses lots of perception qualifiers. Like, to be honest with you, she uses lots of intensifying adverbs like I pointed out earlier, where she says super cute, so cute, really want to help you. Distancing language like that house, those guys, the couple. And a bunch of reticence about stories where she doesn't want to be fully candid. And like me, Carrie Berry also does not think that she's involved in the murders, despite all this, right? So people can speak this way for lots of different reasons. For example, Nichol has reason to want to guard some information. She was cheating with a guy who murdered his family. Also, she probably encouraged him. Well, I think we see enough evidence that she encouraged him to leave his family. They might have joked about killing his family on other chat tools. But I still don't see a murderer here.
30-ish.
All right.
Now, again, we all come on this channel. We all have our ideas and opinions, and we're all welcome to have all different ideas and opinions, and we never mock anybody for theirs. We try to be respectful in this channel. I do want to call out the word reticence. It's one of Deception Detective's favorite words, and one of my favorite words now is reticence. It is very telling, and I'm going to tell you what reticence is if you don't know. Reticence. Liars tend to keep the fabricated parts of their story short to minimize the risk of making mistakes. If the climax of a story, particularly one involving fantastic events, is surprisingly brief, it may be a sign that it's fabricated. Or you're trying to hide something. So if you're trying to keep it brief, he came over and then I told him to leave and then he left. That statement, he came over, I told him to leave and then he left. There's a lot of things in between that she left out. So I'm wondering what the things that she left out, if it had anything to do with the demise of the family or something like her pressuring him to move out or, whatever it may be that she doesn't want to tell the cops.
And, you go straight home. He texts you.
I was already home.
Right. No, he texts you. He goes straight home from your house and he texts you that he's home.
Mm-hmm.
So that should be in your text message.
It should be. I'm pretty positive that was not a phone call. I'm almost positive that was a text. Sometimes I get them flip-flop or I don't remember, but sometimes I know. I'm pretty sure that was a text.
Saturday.
So it's interesting that she says she confuses texts and phone calls. Could that be true? Maybe. I don't think I've ever confused a conversation I had on the phone for one I had on a text message. But that's just me. She could be telling the truth. But if she is lying here, this might be a slight indication that they were using other messaging apps, as I think they were. Ever since my first analysis in the series, I've noted how she's worked very hard to dance around mentioning other apps as a potential communication method between her and Chris. So when she says, I can't remember whether or not that was a text message or a phone call, she might be self-editing because she can't remember if it was actually a text message or something they sent on some other encrypted tool they used when they were talking to each other, right? Even if you're not helping someone plan a murder, if you're cheating on your spouse, chances are you're using some other app to communicate with your lover besides your text messages. You don't want something popping up on your phone while you're having dinner with your wife.
Saturday during your dinner, what kind of conversation did you guys have?
I don't even remember. So he's been trying to eat a little healthier than he normally does. And he's always been in the working out since I knew him. And he tries to eat clean, but he was trying to step it up a little bit. And nothing the people who do the competitions and the shows, they're all super restrictive. And it's nothing like that. It's just day-to-day general.
Sorry,
So that's how I eat.
Sorry. I'll put it back 1 second.
Taking steroids. This is a tangent. So notice
That was just a little glitch here on StreamYard. Thank you for staying in here. Please hit that like button since we had a chance to stop. The internet must have said, hey, hit that like button for me. And also, so yeah, it was a good opportunity to stop. And that's what I'm saying. She acted like she barely talked, but we knew a lot more. We did, and we saw text messages later on. There was a lot more things that were revealed in this case, and that's why I think we keep going back on it, because there's so much that we know now. And I think we're all Watts obsessed. I think that's a perfect name for a channel, the Watts obsession, because or the, like, you know, my memory short term, but yeah, I'm obsessed with the Watts case too, and that's why we're all here. Hit that like button, folks, so we can get in the algorithm and we can have more people come on and we can do collaborations even further.
this is how Nicole's answers before were sort of reticent, sort of vague, fairly short. Now, when she's asked what she and Chris spoke about at the Lazy Dog, we're getting a big answer that goes off. Well, we were talking about macronutrients, and he's not a bodybuilder, but he's doing this and that. To me, this looks like a tangent. It looks like she's filibustering to avoid telling us what they talked about.
And I have a feeling they did talk about, and there were some ultimatums at that dinner, because after that, the family was gone. Very shortly after that, the family was gone. And who cares about how much weight Chris lost during them dating and all the other stuff? Who cares what he ate for dinner? Nobody cares about any of that. But I do believe that last dinner, or the final meal, that there were ultimatums in place, and she absolutely doesn't want to reveal that. Although it isn't a crime to give someone an ultimatum if you don't know that they're going to annihilate their family. He still did something wrong, and she lies a whole bunch, which makes us not understand why she's lying unless she has something to be afraid of.
So maybe at one point they did talk about macronutrients, because 99% of the time, if someone's lying to you, they will omit information. So they will tell the truth.
California.
So maybe while they were browsing the menus at the Lazy Dog, they discussed the calorie counts of what they were going to order. But is that the only thing they spoke about for an hour and a half? I doubt it. But she's telling us this conversation. She started macronutrients. Now she's telling us a whole history of, well, he was dieting, but he wasn't a bodybuilder. Let's see how long she goes on for. Remember, this is likely not the only thing they spoke about at dinner. How often have you been to a dinner and you only talk about one topic? Also, notice how quickly she started off talking about macronutrients, but now she's branched out into talking about fitness in general. This should be a red flag to the investigators. If someone does this with you, where you ask them a potentially sensitive question, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they start giving you a long, rambling, highly detailed response.
I have to shout out to Vale, Kami. She knew all. Thank you for being here. I haven't seen you here before. California love, baby. I'm born and raised California, and I absolutely love it. So I had to shout out. Plus, you're also new, which I haven't seen you before, and you're not a Crime Crew official. I hope that you get gifted a membership, or you become a member so you can be. And we can talk California stuff sometimes, because everybody else is from another state here. I feel left out.
Let them finish, and then circle back. So we'll see if he does that. Let her finish. Okay, so you discussed macronutrients. Great. What else did you talk about? And maybe she'll go on another tangent. Well, we discussed the waitress. She had a funny haircut, and we were talking about that. Let her go on her tangent. Okay, what else did you talk about? Until they can bring themselves to say, we didn't talk about anything else. Or I don't remember. In other words, this looks like a tangent, and tangents are sometimes hard to notice. All right, so let's listen.
The shows, they're all super restrictive, and there's nothing like that. It's just like
Saturday during your dinner, what kind of conversation did you guys have?
I don't even remember. So he's been trying to like eat a little healthier than he normally does, and he's always like been in the working out since I knew him.
Who
Actually,
cares?
this is even weaker than I said. He said, what sort of conversation did you have? And she's telling us, well, he's been into working out. So far, this is non-responsive. So she hasn't even brought herself to say that that's what they talked about.
And who even cares what he ate and how much he lost? Letty, I'm from the Bay Area as well. You're in SoCal. I was born and raised in Southern California. I've been in the Bay Area for 22 years now, maybe 23. Oh, wow. 23 years now. Hello and welcome. I love everybody, but California people can relate to me. And there's not very many of them that are on the show. Welcome, California.
She's telling us a general fact about Chris, that he's been working on his health. That doesn't answer the question about what they spoke about at the Lazy Dog. So maybe there is a reason that the Lazy Dog is important. Maybe that's where, if there was a plan hatched up between them, that's where it happened, or a big falling out, or a big final fight and ultimatum between them. That's where it happened. But as always, I don't want to learn too many details about the case as I analyze it. Otherwise, it will bias my analysis. So as far as I can tell right now, she is sensitive about talking about the conversation they had at Lazy Dog.
Him, and he like tries to eat clean, but he was trying to like step it up a little bit. And nothing like the people who do like the competitions and the shows, they're all super restrictive, and it's nothing like that. It's just like day-to-day general maintenance. But it's how I eat, and it's pretty healthy. And
right, so she was asked what the conversation they had was like at the Salty Dog, and now we're hearing about how Chris is trying to lose weight and how she's trying to lose weight, but they're not bodybuilders. And more tangential rambling information. This is a classic tangent.
And he's been losing a lot of weight. He lost, I want to say like 13 pounds in the time that we were hanging out. And honestly, when you start eating a little bit cleaner and you start working out a little bit harder, the first couple months, especially for a man, because they lose weight faster, it's not something that's like that drastic to me, but it did stand out that it was like a little much. And so I was like, whoa, like maybe you're not eating enough macronutrients. So let me look at them. So he had been working on his MyFitnessPal app and like programming like all stuff he eats. And I just started going through them, and I was like trying to figure out like where his ratios were. And we actually spent a lot of time doing that because he had asked me.
Remember, this is a response to what they talked about at the Lazy Dog. This has been going on for like a minute now. If someone tries to do this to you, let them talk, let them ramble, but you need to circle back. That's great. He was trying to lose weight. It's great you help him with his MyFitness app, but that doesn't tell me what you talked about at the Lazy Dog that night. So besides,
well, the reason she doesn't want to talk about the Lazy Dog that night is because the next day, I believe, it was either the next day or the day after that, the family was all gone. Not California, but Washington, West Coast, baby. I welcome everybody in this chat. I just love people shouting out where they're from. Everybody that comes here, you're making the chat bigger and better, and I appreciate that. And by having other creators in here, you guys don't understand how much that means and how big this is going to get when we have other creators collaborating with each other. Not only does it mean it's going to get big, but what it means is that it's going to have awesome content when we have other creators coming together. That's all I want, is content creators coming together. I want all of us to come together, and we're going to give you the best information when we all come together, because we all have different information to give, folks. Please understand that. We all have something special to give.
Macronutrients, and she hasn't even said that's what they were talking about. She hasn't even said this was actually their discussion. So besides macronutrients, what else did you two talk about at Lazy Dog?
Me to do it for him, because I just was at the point where I was like, if his weight loss slows down in a few weeks, he'll be fine. And if it doesn't, then his macros are a little off. It's not like that big of a deal. Like in the workout community, this is like a very normal thing. But
Did you have any other outside concerns, like potential drug use, alcohol use, any of that stuff that led you to go, hey, he's lost an extreme amount of weight in such a short period of time?
So this is a major turning point in this interview. And it tells us that the investigator likely does not know what he's doing. She just went on a rambling tangent about helping Chris with his macronutrients and how they were losing weight, but they're not bodybuilders, and her own diet. All in response to what were they talking about at the Lazy Dog. We still don't have an answer to what they spoke about at the Lazy Dog that night. And now we have the investigator, instead of letting her finish and circling back to say, Well, what else did you talk about at the Lazy Dog? Ask a follow-up question to her tangent. This is a mistake you should never make in your own life. If someone starts giving you a non-responsive answer and going down all these paths, let them finish, but bring them back on track. Don't forget your original question. And this isn't the only mistake we've seen him make so far in this.
This is like the umpteenth, 27th, I like the 1,010% time. And yes, this is like family here. And the bigger we get, the bigger family we're going to get. We do not disrespect each other. And all of you, in my eyes, are moderators, okay? So if you see someone in here, it's like if you see something, say something. You see someone disrespecting, let them have their opinions, but let's not disrespect each other ever. Hello, Crystal. I don't know how to say your last name, but hello, crime family. We are the crime crew. Remember that. When we blow up and we have all kinds of different content creators coming together, you remember that we're family here, folks. And we can have other opinions. You know why? Because when we have other opinions, it makes it for a better community so that we get all kinds of different information and we see all aspects, and it opens our minds up to all kinds of ideas, and then it helps us to solve cases, find people, and really make a movement happen that's different than other people are doing. So that's why we want the crime crew to come together instead of apart, which means I invite everybody to my channel. Drop content creators' names in the channel. Content creators, come over. Let's collaborate. The bigger and the more people, the better. We're family here, folks.
This video, we've seen him ask loaded questions. We've seen him ask questions that, even if they were answered honestly, wouldn't get us to the truth. So there are lots of lessons to learn in this video, and we've seen them beginning, middle, and end throughout. So as far as I'm concerned, neither of these people have the benefit of the doubt anymore. And since we're coming up on an hour, I'll wrap it up here. On your screen right now is a video I recommend you watch, as well as my Nichol Kessinger playlist if you want to see the other parts of this series. Until
yeah, we are going to watch other parts of the series. Love you, Deception Detective. I know you're probably busy tonight. Last night we did this one here, the doubt one, and DD came in, and it was amazing because I fangirl over DD just because he's just a smart guy, and I love smart people that bring knowledge and can talk about things. And I love to talk about things even if we don't agree, because it gives me this middle ground to have new ideas and figure things out. So yeah, thank you, Giselle. Well, Jay, you have a great channel, lady. I've looked around out of curiosity, and I love your channel. Honestly, for real, I'm not an internet guru. I know you're not. LOL. Yes, that's love all the way from Boston. Well, I appreciate each and every single one of you. I'm going to put myself up for a second and show you all some love. Just know I love each and every single one of you. Everybody's welcome, with different opinions or not. Be respectful to each other. Let's make this community bigger. You see it happening every day. I show you when content creators want to collaborate. I try to let you know. You see them coming on the channel, and you see things happening every day. So every day that we come in and we do this together, we're going to get more information. We're talking about Rex Hewerman here, and that's the Lisk killer, Long Island serial killer. And yeah, we're waiting for trial to start. That's going to be big. I'm going to cover as much as I can, as many hours in a day. Remember, folks, I have a job. I've been working at managing director / CEO of a mechanical engineering company for 17 years. So I work during the day, and then I come here in the evening, sometimes during the day, to be able to chat with you and bring information. I haven't done the Barry Marpew case, but I feel like I'm about to. I was listening to it yesterday, and it's crazy, and it's getting crazy. So I'd love to do it. Been watching for a while. Enjoy your channel. Hello from Northeast Texas. Hello from California. I love each and every one of you. I love Watts Wednesdays. Super chill nights with you all. Just absolutely, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else except for with my daughter, who's roller skating in the house right now. We're about to go to the hotel, and she needs my attention and wants it, and I want her attention. On that note, folks, I love you all. hit that like button, share this video. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe, and then go and make some comments after this so we can get the algorithm and get more creators to come over. I invite creators to come over to the channel so we can all get together. All right. There's no threats with other creators. All it does is give us a wider view and more content, folks. Love you all.
Guilty of crime.
I want to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed my content, please share this video, like, and subscribe. You can also follow me over at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, or Gmail. If you'd like to donate to my channel, you can use Cash App or Venmo or PayPal. Thank you very much in advance. Guilty of crime.
Are you guilty?